everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. How you doing today? I'm so happy you're here. Well, I've got a bunch of requests for a video that's going to be a very, very long video. Sprouse, who is a child actor, comes out and does this interview, and it's apparently really, really eye-opening to what it's like to be a child actor, to grow up in an industry where you are constantly on camera and being taken advantage of and exploited, and I haven't seen any of it, and so I'm going to blind react to that conversation here with you now. Sprouse on the Dad Challenge podcast. Let's go. Like I said before, I have not seen any of this before. So, Sprouse is an actor from a lot of movies. Apparently, he plays Jughead too. My wife was saying, and he was in what I remember him for is Big Daddy with Adam Sandler. Him and his brother were actors. A lot of times, I don't know if you knew this, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think I'm right. Is that childhood actors that had identical twins were used because they could overcome a lot of the childhood actor rules and laws, because a child actor can only act for a certain amount of hours during the day, so they'd get identical twins. I think Full House with the Olsen twins was similar, so they could work them. One of them would be, doing their thing normally, and then they'd switch off, and the other kid would come in. And so I think that's why they use identical twins. Anyway, that's what he is sort of famous for. Then kind of continued on, and so yeah, let's watch this together. I'm obviously not going to be doing the entire interview, just kind of the most important parts we're going to touch on, and we're going to kind of see if we can compare it in parallel with what it's like to be a child influencer who is forced to do this as well. So yeah, let's watch it.
I mean, I'm really glad I'm doing this podcast with you at this time in my life, because for the last year and a half, I've really been thinking about questions like this. What is it that still compels me into certain professional pursuits or artistic pursuits now? I think when I was younger, it was definitely a financial pressure. There were kind of two kinds of kids, working kids, really. There was the kids that were doing it to put food on the table for mommy and daddy, and then like the thespian children. Like, Mommy, I want to go into acting. And they would show up, and it would be this huge gap between philosophies, between like, yeah, man, it's a job, and like, no, this is a craft. This is, this is an art. And those kids kind of showed up around 14. And for me, I think I had trained a kind of workaholism since I was a child, in order to, one, feel valued by my environment, both immediate family and audience in very many cases, that has stuck with me, a work ethic that has stuck with me now to this day. Like,
I got to pause him there and say that's really, really eye-opening what he said there. The validation he receives from getting the attention from his mom because he's paying the bills, and the validation he receives from his audience, that's actually, he was groomed into that. Right? And I know everybody hates the word grooming, but that's basically what this is. In this sense, it's grooming the child to look for those validations so that he feels good about himself. And if you want to parallel that to family vloggers, it's exactly the same thing that's going on. These kids are growing up in a world where they are content. They probably get the good stuff like trips and toys and love and everything else when they do the thing that their parent requires them to do to pay the bills. And that's really, really interesting, because those kids might not even realize it till later, and I don't think they would. And that's why consent is so important, that they are getting their validation and their love and everything else because they are working, not because they are who they are inherently. That's really sad for these kids, man.
I do not feel good when I am not working. And I think a lot of people can say that. And that's something I've been trying to unpack over the last year and a half, is what would happen if I just simply stepped away for good and enjoyed my life, which is really the purpose of why we're all here.
It established a relationship with work.
Mm-hmm. It did. I mean, it started for me financially. Single mom, 2 twin boys, put food on the table. She is still able to be a mother while we can still pursue a sort of improvement of our lifestyle, and in very many ways she was living vicariously through the success of her children. But
there it is. I don't think you can gloss over that without touching on it to a degree, because that's exactly what these parents are doing. Okay? They are living vicariously through their children. They are profiting off their children. They are showing you a life that they probably wanted when they were young and didn't get. And they're showing it to you to make money. And they're doing it, and they don't get to live the life that they lead without their children doing those things. And again, I've said this a million times on this channel. No child should ever be the sole breadwinner or the breadwinner to any degree for any family ever. Child actor or not, family influencer or not, or family vlogger or not. No child should ever have the pressure put on them to be the reason that there's food on the table. And that's why child acting is so dangerous, because that's in itself is fully it's fully exploitation. Of course it is. Now, again, the difference is these kids are at least protected to some degree, right? You're not seeing their real life. They are acting. Like he said, it's a craft, it's an art. But they're still exploited, and he is the product of that. And these kids that are growing up in the internet are a massive product of that. The only thing that's different, again, is that they don't have scripts. Well, if they do, they're shitty. But you see their real life. You see the real things that they don't want you to see. They might not even get paid for it ever. 8 Passengers is a great example of, like, that's her money, and she knows that she won't give her kids any of that money. Right? I think, who else said that? It was Love Meg who said, I'm not going to pay my kids. They don't get any of this stuff. How many family vloggers are going to waste all of their ill-gotten gains before their kids even age out of the home? Right? I think of someone like Jess Fam, wherein what's going to happen in 6-7 years with Jess Fam is she's going to be irrelevant on the internet, and all the money that she's built up to this point, great, that she said she's going to give her kids. How do you know? Is she going to burn through all that because she run out of money because they need to go to Disney 100 more times or go on trips to hold on to that last bit of relevancy that's in her life? You know, she doesn't have, the thing is that she doesn't have to. Family vloggers don't have to do anything because there are no laws or rules in place for those kids.
You used the word pushed earlier. Yeah. Were you pushed into acting, in your view?
Well, I didn't, I would hardly call it pushing because I was 8 months old. I don't even think I knew, I was on screen. I don't remember much of like the early, the diaper commercials and things like that. So the choice never really existed. I was there. That's it.
And a lot of family vloggers will say that exactly. They're here. This is our life. I can't show you my life without showing my kids. This is our life. But it's different because you're not really showing a real life. Though that's not real life. But he's saying the same thing, that these kids don't even, so half of them aren't even aware. They are born on YouTube, half of these kids. And they're never going to be aware of that till they're older. Says the Section 38, 614, and 616, children employed in the entertainment industry are exempt from child labor requirements, except that infants under 1 month must have written certification from a licensed physician stating they are at least 15 days old and that they are physically capable of handling the work. 15 days old. How many kids do you know on YouTube and family vlogs that are born on the internet, that are born into content that is paid? That's basically breaking the law. But again, they skirt it because there's no actual law for family vloggers. But once that law does come into place, and it will eventually, those people who are giving birth will no longer be able to give birth on the internet. That's going to be quite interesting to see, because 15 days old at minimum. And so all these people know that they're breaking this rule, this law, and they don't give a shit.
If I were to sit here and talk about regretting my childhood within the industry, I think that would be silly. It toughened the hell out of both my brother and I, and many kids that go through that same thing. But I'm grateful for the financial stability of it. Yeah.
I like his honesty. He's grateful for the financial stability, and that's great. He got to have that because of the laws that were in place that protected him and protected his money. Okay? And that's in stark contrast to family vloggers, where kids might age out and not have a penny to show for what they did on the internet. Currently, right now, Doherty Dozen's going through some bullshit with the kinship children. Right? Those kids might leave that place and not have a penny to show for it. Alicia even said in a video, they won't be able to take their gaming systems or any of the expensive things she bought them because she thinks mom will just sell them. Okay? And regardless of whether or not she's right or not, those kids might leave that place being fully exploited only and with nothing in their hands. Nothing to show for all the exploitation. Cole Sprouse here gets to live very wealthy and everything else, and he's grateful for that, and he's honest. And I know I've said this about a lot of child actors, that they rarely come through the other side intact. This guy came through, and he plays a very young person, even as a 30-year-old, because likely didn't end up with drugs and alcohol and everything else. He looks young, so he plays young characters. It looks like he lived a normal life. Also looks like he's one of the smartest people I've ever. If you listen to the way he speaks, this guy is very educated. So it sounds like he got an education. Again, protected by federal laws. Where again, you look over at family vloggers and half these kids can't even read or write because their parents keep them home to homeschool them so they can be in content, and none of them get proper educations.
This industry, in very many ways, it encourages the worst qualities of you as a person.
I'm always going to be making the parallel, so I keep saying it, but the same thing, yes. If you look at certain families vloggers too, it's odd. I know I keep coming back to Jess Fam, but if you see Jess Fam and the way that she is and how she's developmentally arrested at 17 years old and acts like a teenager, dresses like a teenager and everything else, and loves drama like a teenager, her daughter, her oldest, is coming up in that world and is emulating almost everything about her. Wants a phone, wants to be on TikTok, wants to be an influencer, talks about her sexuality and everything else online like it's some big thing to soft launch. Or to launch to the world like it's some big thing. She feels like she needs to do that for the validation it receives. But that's really, really incredible, because what he's saying there is really interesting, because Jess Fam is living now vicariously through that story she's telling with Lilia. And that's only going to get worse. Same thing's happening with Jonathan Sakona Jolie and his kid. Okay, this kid is saying I'm a girl and this and all that. But the odds of a dad who said he's non-binary raising a kid who was also gender confused, right? That is astronomically high. And so there's got to be something kind of imprinting on these people. These kids these influencers are imprinting this onto their children and saying the only validation you're going to get is from the attention you get from comments and shit on the internet. And that is so crazy, because we're seeing it time and time and time again. Well, almost every family vlogger that has been on the internet since their child was young and the child now is a teenager, show me one where the teenager's not almost exactly like the main character of the family vlog. Like I think of Asa Moss fathering autism, and his son, Isaiah, who's almost identical in every way to his dad, the same way, even with the exploitation. Just Cass from Not Enough Nelson's, just like her mom. They're all raised in this world and they become the same person. It's really interesting and sad.
And I think as I've aged and I've looked back on a lot of the circumstances of that entire environment, I see a person that grapples with mental illness, drug abuse, but primarily narcissism.
Man, so interesting. Because as I'm hearing him say that, I'm thinking of family vloggers and the moms generally that run these things. Now, there are some dads too. But you think about that. How many of these women are addicted to some kind of substance? Right? And narcissism generally is the feeder of it all. But we know that Alicia, especially Dr. Dozen, the alcohol was a big thing that she showed off a lot and she was proud of it. Right? She talks about how she takes a bunch of medications. Even if it's not like drugs that are illicit and illegal, I think almost every single one of these moms is on something to a degree that's like an ADHD, like it could be an ADHD medicine when they are not even ADHD. It could be something, it could be coffee. It could be they are addicted to something. They are addicted personalities, are addicted to the money and the fame and everything at minimum, but the narcissism is what compounds it. It's what expands it. And that's really, really interesting that he's saying this is a mom that I was taken away from because of all this shit that was going on. And yet none of these family vlogger kids ever, no matter what we see, have ever had them step in and do anything. I'm thinking to myself of Jenny Poppich, still with her mom. Of all the shit that we've seen of that, I feel like maybe back in the day, CPS had more power or more teeth or something. But we're seeing a whole slew of these family vloggers who get away with all this shit in front of our eyes and are never held accountable for their actions.
A wicked narcissism. The inability to perceive anything outside your own perspective would probably be the biggest sickness I see.
Wow.
And
yep.
That just doesn't work with being the mother. That just doesn't work with being in a family.
Just hear this. That type of behavior doesn't work as being a mother. It doesn't work being. It's not conducive to a good rearing of a child, to good family dynamics. It's not. And every single one of them are like that. And this guy is telling you with his own words that he grew up in that, and it's not conducive. And we know it isn't, because we have common sense. But there are so many people who fall into it that think it's fine. And now finally these people are speaking up, and this is an amazing conversation.
When I don't talk about it too much because I don't ever want to be perceived as a victim of it. I am not, and have never been, and never will be, a victim of any circumstance that I am in. I don't wear victimhood on my shoulder. I don't like to act like I am my wounds and to repeatedly be reminded of my wounds.
What he's telling you there is he's not going to let his shit that happened to him as a kid dictate his decisions going forward. That's something I did too. It's something that, you know, I didn't cycle back into the poverty and alcoholism and drug abuse and everything else because I chose to not let my childhood trauma be my deciding factor for everything I did in my life. I'm not going to be a perpetual victim. Whereas today, and that's really, really telling about this guy and how intelligent he is, today, your victimhood, actually, a lot of people wear that as a badge of honor to say, well, as this person who had this happen to me or this happened, I can say, you know, and they use it as like this, sometimes a conversation starter, sometimes a place to be like, I'm a victim, woe is me, because victimhood is rewarded now. And to some degree, you sort of deserve it because you had to go through some shit, but at the same time, those people are stuck in that trauma and they don't realize if they get out of it, they're going to be so much better for it.
And I think it's your responsibility as an adult who loves a child to encourage that lantern consciousness and that presentedness for as long as you can. And as far as you can. And anything that takes them away from that presentedness should be the enemy of your life and that child's life.
That's probably the most important thing he said in this interview. Obviously, I've scrubbed through most of it just because it doesn't really... You know, it's an amazing interview. You guys should go watch this. This guy's brilliant. And what he just said there just gave me shivers. And it gave me pause to say, how many kids do you guys watch on the internet who don't get that? Who don't get to be present, who don't get to play with the kids, who don't get to have a normal childhood because they are their parents' reason to make money. They are their parents' validation. They are the likes and the clicks. They are the ones posting their children doing inappropriate things and swearing and doing quote-unquote funny things or holding the camera in front of the mirror so the mom can twerk. They're the ones who are showing, you know, their period is happening and they're filming it. Oh, you had your period for the first time, let's film it. They're the ones having their chest sized on the internet and let's go buy bras. They're the ones being put in the internet with their mouths open and thumbnails while they're at the dentist. They're the ones swimming in bikinis. They're the ones being completely exploited, right? And they don't get a normal childhood. They don't get to consent to the shit that is out there on the internet. And a lot of times they get turned away from school because they're bullied for what has happened. Like Not Enough Nelson just came with a video. The daughter doesn't want to go to school because she's bullied because of her presence online. Might be the sweetest kid in the world. And there's this big conversation going on right now about like this idea of like, you know, it's never the parents' responsibility to, you know, be something different if their kids are getting bullied for it. I think one of the big ones was there's one on the Whatever podcast, and the girl said a kid who is a parent who is a porn star and OnlyFans, whatever, that kid is not giving that parent consent to be that person in the world. It was really, really interesting conversation. And then everybody just goes to be like, well, why not just like, let's stop bullying. But what's easier in the world, okay? Because bullies have existed since Cain. It's not going away. It's never going to go away because inherently humans are infallible and we're evil to a degree. Not all of us, but we all are to some degree, have some kind of hang up. Bullying will never stop. It will never ever happen, okay? And so what's easier? You to not be a porn star that your kids' friends and their teachers can look up and bully them for, or just not to do that and to take your kids' futures into consideration? What's easier? And if you're not allowing your kid to have a normal childhood, you're doing it wrong. And that does go with childhood actors and stuff like that. Even though you can see he came out on the other side pretty happy with the way his life has happened, considering all the shit that he went through. Because all of us have gone through some shit, actors or not, right? But that really, really speaks a ton to me about all these kids who don't really have a voice and who are finally speaking up, but privately on Reddit forums and in articles and with other creators. That's got to mean something, right? All of these parents are not allowing their children to have normal childhoods, and that's one of the most heartbreaking aspects of family vlogging and child exploitation. It's so sad, and I'm glad he said it.
Isn't that what happened to you?
Yeah, it is.
You have one last piece of work to do. What is that piece of work?
That whatever I could do as my last action would create more easiness for them.
That's important.
Because life is going to roll over you regardless.
Hear that? That hit me pretty hard, not gonna lie. That my last action would be something that would make my kids have a better future, a more secure future. And I'm thinking about that in terms of family vlogging and These parents can't say that to their children. And that's one of the saddest parts about this thing. They can't say that, what would you do for your children to make their life better? And one of the things they should be doing is giving them privacy, not exploiting them, not using them for money. And they can never take that back, and it's something they can never, ever, ever claim to be as good parents, because they're not good parents. They can't say, I'm good because I did this, because you didn't get your child's full consent to do what you did to them. And the ramifications of their future is not spelled out, nor will it be until they get there. And what happens when it does turn out to be super negative? You can't go back in time. So all these people deciding to do all this stuff early on, none of them really, really do give a shit about their kids. And I know I say that all the time, but it's so evident now when you hear something like this, say that, would he put his kids in child acting? I highly doubt it, right? All these kids coming out of family vlogging and all these TV shows and stuff like that included them. Do they have shows that continue? Would they put their kids? You don't see any of them putting their kids on the internet. That says so much to me. And it's so sad that all these kids that you see on these family vlogs, all their parents did was use them. Was put their stuff on the internet. Was share it with everybody because they think that they needed to, because they felt like this was the only way, because they have no other thing to offer the world. And these people, like I'm thinking of like someone like Matt and Abby and the Beeston bunch and the Beeston a-holes and all those people who are so early at this and you can stop right now at this moment and not do it. They won't do that. I hope they all watch Cole Sprouse. I hope they all read Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And I hope they take into consideration the future of their children. It's such an easily provable thing that if you're a good parent, that all you have to do is not use your children. It's so easily done to just stop doing that. And the fact that none of them do it, none of them will change it, should speak volumes about who they are as people and as parents. And in the end, the only person who suffers, really, are the children. I mean, the parents will suffer in the end as well because they won't have relationships with their kid when the kids go no contact when they leave the home, generally. Okay? And they might suffer later, but but a lot of them won't care because narcissism takes over. And a lot of them, the blame is always going to be on somebody else. And those children who leave and don't want to be a part of those things, well, that's because it's something wrong with them, right? It's never going to be on the parent. But we're not even seeing, we're at the tip of the iceberg right now with conversations like this and all the other ones that we've been having. In 10 years, this is going to be insanity. And none of these parents are listening. Right, Gus? Right? Who's my good boy? Such a good boy. Okay, go. Again, guys, I'm not going to show you the interview just because it's so long, but that was an amazing interview and some very great insight into someone who grew up in the industry who has a lot of warnings for people, even though he might not even be saying them as warnings, that they are. He has a lot of pent-up frustration and anger towards his mom and the shit that he had to do. He's now thankful for it because he came out on the other side, right? But I'm sure he's seen other kids come out on the other side not in the same predicament he is in. Not in the same light, not in the same goodness. Clearly is a smart kid, went to college, had, he's probably seen so many kids not be able to go through that. And that's probably, he didn't touch on that, but that's probably jaded him to a degree as well. We heard from Will Wheaton's article where he ran into a mom who was trying to get her kid to do this. And he's like, don't, stop. How many childhood actors and people in this industry have we heard give warnings like that to parents upcoming right now? And it's still happening. For the love of God, I can't wait till TikTok is banned. It's going to be a big hit against child exploitation, and I cannot wait for it. But I think the laws need to be passed and put in place really soon. I think that already there's a stigma if you do this to your children that you're already looked down upon, and you should be. But I think there honestly needs to be a big step up from social media platforms to stop this to a degree. Like they say 13 to be on these platforms, it should be 13 to be exposed on these platforms too. Like just because you're 13, you can get on there. But what about these children like who are birthed, again, breaking rules and laws, birthed on the internet? They don't have a choice. And these platforms are going to be sued for that shit eventually. And it's going to take that or someone being murdered or hurt for this to stop. But I think the conversation is heading in the right direction, and I'm happy for that because of conversations like this. And that's good. So Cole Sprouse, you're amazing. You're a very articulate young gentleman, a scholar. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this interview, and thanks for being honest about that, because then we can talk about this in this light. So I appreciate him doing this. It's really good, and I hope more speak up in the future. So it's been great. Thanks, guys, for telling me to watch that. It was really, really important. Everybody take a deep breath. It's tough sometimes. You know, the guy's still hurting a little bit, but he's coming out on the other side. And I think, you know, it's good that he's telling everybody. So, and thank you guys for being here for these types of conversations and spreading this stuff to me and telling me what to watch sometimes. You know, sometimes you don't want to watch one because it's so long, but you get like 100 messages and you're like, thank you. So, you know, basically you guys are often the reason I will cover a subject. And so I really appreciate you always thinking of me when you're seeing something and saying it to me. I really, really do appreciate that, because you guys are incredible and valuable. Don't you ever damn well forget it. Maybe you need to forgive someone in your past as well, like he did. Might be something you could do, could free you up a little bit. Don't fly Flair or American Airlines. And I will see you tomorrow.